half hour or so. First, we have Devarshi, Senior Technical Marketing Engineer from Cisco, who will give you an overview of the Cisco integration with AppDynamics and why it's important. Next, we'll have Chandra provide a demo on how that looks from the AppDynamics side, and then Devarshi will show a demo of how it looks from the Cisco view. And lastly, we'll conclude with Q&A, and we'll have Prakash from the AppDynamics also join to ensure you get the answers that you need. And with that, I'll hand it over to Devarshi.
Thank you, Alyssa. So, Troubleshoot Less and Innovate More. Before I get started into the webinar, we need to understand why are we talking about this? What are the challenges that we face? And I want you to think from a application user's perspective. Most of you would be using some sort of an application either on your mobile phones or your personal computers. If you are using Uber, sometimes your Uber app is not able to connect to their servers. You just move to them. If you're using or trying to buy something on Walmart and it's not reachable or if it's taking a lot of time to load, you just go on to Target or Nordstrom, right? So the users are not going to wait. And whenever you lose a user, it means there is a cost to your business. I want to show some data which is very relevant to this problem, where your application performance equals your business performance, where downtime or average outage cost in the US is $400,000 for every outage. We had some major US airlines which had ticketing outages. We have some coffee chain apps which had issues with the app on the first day of the promotion. And even during Black Friday, we've had technical glitches. All of these cost the business. This is the scenario that we are trying to avoid. Now, if you have a business outage, what usually happens in the back end in your IT environments in your companies is something like this. Now, if you look at the current application environment, it's pretty complex. Even 5-7 years ago, the apps were much simpler. You would have your applications running in your data centers and your VMs. But with the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning, the applications have gotten more complex. The application delivery has gone closer to the user rather than being centered in the data center. A lot of times, your organizations would want to leverage different application services or different services from different public clouds. For example, you would want to leverage your infrastructure services from AWS, container orchestration from Kubernetes, and Office or Office-related apps from Azure, right? So your application complexity grows, and your developers require complicated stacks or complex stacks, which include Java, PHP, and different environments. And with the advent of serverless, it's taking the complexity even a step further. Now, I want to share some data with you about the complexity of applications that we are looking at right now. By 2020, 66% of the total IP traffic will be coming in from mobile devices, which is why it's important that the performance of your applications to mobile devices is accelerated. 93% of the organizations are already using multiple clouds, so your multi-cloud environment becomes very important. You'll have 28.5 billion network devices connected to each other by 2022. That's a humongous scale. And security comes into play as well because of this complex environment. An industry study shows that on an average, a breach is detected every 100 days. So this is the complexity of the environment that you're looking at. Now, if something goes wrong in this environment, you have back-end IT war rooms that are being set up. From a developer's perspective, you have multiple teams working together. The development team would be, hey, our code is working fine. I think it's the network. The network team would be like, my network latency and my network performance is absolutely fine. I don't see any issues here. But usually what happens is eventually in that process, you end up pointing blame to one team or another, and more likely than not, it happens to be the network team. And in this process, you're losing critical time, which affects your business, which in turn affects the amount of dollars that you bring in. This was from an IT operations point of view. But what about the business? The business war room is slightly different. You want to figure out why your spend is down. Why are the conversions of getting to the site and buying the product not happening? You need to look at all of these issues when you're looking at an application outage from a holistic point of view. As an organization, you want to be more proactive. You don't want to end up in situations where you and your teams have to spend a lot of time troubleshooting and debugging. Now, if you look at the amount of time that troubleshooting and visibility takes up in IT organizations, it's staggering. 43% of IT time is spent troubleshooting. Now, if you are looking at your resources, if you're looking at the spend that goes into it, this is not something that you would want. You'd want your IT to be more proactive, building new applications, rolling out new application versions every so often, right? Rather than troubleshooting and figuring out what's wrong, which in turn affects your business. Now, imagine a scenario where you could cut the troubleshooting time that your IT department spends into half. Roughly, that would account to 55 extra days of being productive. Now, if you have 55 days of being productive, think about your operational expenditure going down. Think about the new applications that you can deliver. This in itself is really powerful. So how do we get to the point of having those 55 productive days where you could do a lot of things, including go on a lovely vacation? Now, if you look at current IT organizations, these organizations are siloed. If you look at the application teams, they want to isolate the application performance issues, but they don't have enough network diagnostics to say, hey, this is concretely the network. From a network point of view, you bring up the application, you have the network connectivity up and running, but they lack visibility into what those application workloads are, which are connected to your network. How this affects, how any policy change in my network affects the application. They don't have visibility into this. And our objective is to break these silos down where these teams can perform close to each other, they can work very closely with each other, and the application downtime, if it happens, you can root cause it much faster. Now, cost of network operations is skyrocketing as well. If you look at the annual spend on network operations, it's north of $60 billion. 75% of your OpEx is spent on visibility and troubleshooting, and policy violations, 70% of them happen due to human errors. So if we take all these factors into account, and if we can eliminate or mitigate these factors, it would bring down this cost drastically. With the environment that you have today, you are basically flying in blind because you don't have a correlation between how your application is running, what are the networking components that it is running on, and vice versa. From a network point of view, you don't know what application components are running. So if we could solve this simple problem and give you visibility across the entire stack, right from layer 2 all the way up to layer 7, you would have a much better experience with your IT teams. So we've spoken about the problem. We've spoken about what are the challenges, what are the financial implications, what are the implications in terms of technology. How are we helping you solve that? We are helping you solve that through an integration between AppDynamics and Cisco ACI. Now, for those of you who are not aware, AppDynamics is the largest application performance management platform that is out there in the industry. It helps you build dynamic application maps, have real-time baseline of performances of the application, automated code-level diagnostics, In addition to that, it does end-user monitoring and management. It also has agents which look into your serverless workloads as well. On the network side, we have Cisco ACI, which is Cisco's turnkey SDN solution. ACI provides a common policy framework for the users, so you deal with the policy framework saying that I want endpoints A to talk to endpoints B, rather than saying these are the underlying network protocols and I need to set them. Your applications are on-prem as well as in public clouds. ACI is the network for any application which is either residing on-prem as well as on the public cloud. So if we bring these two solutions together, what do you get? You get visibility not just from the application layer, but you get visibility into the business transactions that are going, the applications that are supporting those business transactions, and from an infrastructure layer, you get visibility into the network as well. So these two technologies together can help solve the problem that we articulated in the earlier slides. If you look at the users of AppDynamics and ACI, they're completely different. The users of AppDynamics are application operations team, and users of ACI are network operations team. So where do these two technologies intersect, or where do they collide? So I started talking to AppD team in 2018, and we were debating and discussing what use cases and how do we enable them, right? So the use cases that came up were when these two teams have to talk to each other. And when do these two teams have to talk to each other? They have to talk to each other when there is an application outage, when there is an application issue, typically in the war room. Yes. So what we did was we came up with two workflows. The first workflow is from an application operations persona's point of view, where you want to determine whether this is the network or not, if the issue is caused by the network or not, and if it is created by the network, how do I hand it over to the networking team, the ACI team, with the relevant context? Because most of these application issues are transient. You want to capture the state of the network as soon as those issues happen. And once you have that actionable information, you can basically say, hey, network team, this is what was going on at this time. Please take a look. These are all the logs related to the network. The second use case that we have is the use case from a network operator's point of view. As I highlighted earlier, networking teams don't have visibility into the application workloads that are running behind the networks. So ACI was there. Even when ACI was not there, the only thing that they knew was these are the MACs and IPs that are forming the endpoints behind my network. They didn't even know what sort of hypervisors are behind this particular endpoint, what sort of VMs are running on top of it. So with ACI, we have some level of visibility there, but still we don't have visibility into the application workloads that are running behind those endpoints, those VMs. So with this integration, we are bringing the smarts that AppDynamics has in terms of application, in terms of tiering that they have, in terms of metrics that they bring in, and tying it to the ACI side of things, tying it to the network and how it would reflect on the network. So what does this enable you to do? This enables you to confidently make changes in network configuration and see what application components are being affected. And if they are being affected negatively, you can get to that configuration change. You can get to the policy change much faster. And this also helps the network team shift from the mindset of being guilty until proven innocent to, hey, I am innocent all the time. Now, that doesn't happen, but still, it's a good visualization and a good visibility to have. Okay, so I believe we've spoken a lot. We've gone through a lot of slides, and we don't want to have death by PowerPoint. So we are going to jump into a live demo. And for the demo, I have Chandra from AppDynamics team. We are going to be playing two different roles. I work in the ACI team. So of course, I'll be the network operator or the network admin, and Chandra will be the application operator or the app ops persona. So Chandra, what do we have for the demo here? Can you walk us through the demo environment?
Thank you, Devashi. Thank you, Devashi. Before jumping into the demo, I want to talk about the application that we are showing in this demo. It's a very simple e-commerce application. It's a bookstore application where users log in, authenticate their credentials, and then they select the books that they want to buy. They order those books and pay for their orders.
Is it a bookstore application based out of Seattle, Washington? I hope not.
Yes, it is. If you want to, you can deploy that or if you want, and we can give you this application for free. It's developed inside AppD just for these demos. This sample application is running on ACI Fabric, and it's instrumented using AppD APM agents and the network agents. So all these services that are running inside this application are developed in Java, so they are running in JVMs. So let's move on to the controller, AppD controller, where this application is reporting its metrics to. This is the AppD controller where this application is reporting its metrics to. If you see here, this application has 4 different tiers. The e-com tier serving its the front end, and it has inventory tier, which has the inventory services providing the list of books that are there in the inventory. And it has the order tier providing the order service, and it has a payment tier to pay the actual order.
So Chandra, if you look at this diagram, right, the lines between these different tiers could basically explain the application flow map, right? So if a user logs in, they want to look at inventory, the flow would be from e-com to inventory to the database, which is hosting the inventory, and for payment, it's the other way around.
Exactly. So these lines here show the business transaction flow that's actually happening between the services. So if it is a simple authentication, the very first step, the UI will authenticate by making a DB call. So that's what this link here shows.
Got it. And we are overlaying the metrics that are being captured by the core APM agent into this.
Right. So this view shows only the L7 information that is collected from the APM agent, in this case the Java agent, because all these services are the Java services.
Got it. And can you tell me more about what is the value within each and every one of these circles? Like I see 2 nodes, so can you talk more about it?
Right. So each of the circles is actually a tier, a bunch of services doing similar functionality. So if you take this inventory tier, it has 2 nodes in it. That means there are 2 JVMs running behind the scenes. So both of them are running the same service, but because there are 2 different services, for the scale purpose, most probably it is behind a load balancer.
Got it. So Chandra, we just saw some part of the donut go yellow. So what happened there?
So we have a bunch of default rules that comes with every application that is on the controller. So those default rules, whenever there is a slowness in the transaction, they show yellow, right? So there is a transaction here that's going on through this service, and the service is responding slow to that request.
So basically, you set some rules, and the transaction is violating those rules, right? Which is why you are having this show up as a warning.
Yes, that's right. And if it crosses certain thresholds, it actually uses baselines too, right? So it automatically learns based on the history of the application, and the health rules are applied on the baseline. If you see here, as we saw yellow here on the order tier, sometime back, and now it's slowly turning into red. That's because the health rule violations are critical now. The error thresholds have increased, so it shows the order tier is almost down, looking at the health rule violations. So to debug this, without actually having the complete information about the network, it's actually difficult to where exactly the problem is happening, if it is a network problem or whether it's an application problem. So jumping into the network dashboard here, which actually shows the L4 correlation between this L7 and L4 information of this application. So you actually see the load balances also here. So these are the load balances in front of the order tier, and the other one is in front of the inventory tier. So to debug this further, so we can actually look into the network metrics here. And see, you see here actually the business transaction errors have started coming in when the network errors have also started coming in. That means there is a strong correlation here between the network and the business transaction errors. So that gives an indication that there is something wrong with the network, but we have the visibility into only L4 level here. So to extend this visibility into the, okay, to look further into the other metrics of this network errors, I see thin black holes coming in here, which is basically the packets are being dropped somewhere between those services. So to debug that, so let's cross-launch into the ACI. I see this link is red, so there seems to be something wrong. So let's cross-launch into the ACI and see what's going on there. So
this is the part, Chandra, where an application team would hand it over to the network team and say, hey, I'm seeing something wrong between these two application services, which is running on your network. This is the right context for it. I've created a troubleshooting session for you. Please go ahead and take a look.
Exactly. So this is not a random information from the app operations team to the network operations team that there is some network problem. But here you have the right context between two services. In this case, between this order service and the payment service.
Okay. So the link that you saw between order and payment actually looks something like this on the network, where you have the VM or the endpoint that is supporting the order connected to leaf 2 over Ethernet 1/6, payment tier connected to leaf 3 over 1/6, and these two leaf interfaces are connected by a spine. So the link that you saw is actually this behind the network, so you get more L2 and L3 visibility and correlation. So now this gives you an idea about the topology of the network and how these endpoints are connected. I want to take a deeper look into, are there any drops that are happening? How do I get to the root cause faster? So I'll go into drops and stats and try to see if there are any drops on any of these interfaces. So just give it a couple of seconds. It's loading the data right now to see if there are any faults happening at this point in time. Okay, so I do see some information whether it's dropping the packets or not. Now this gives me some inclination of what's going on at the interface level, but what about the policy level? So I can go into contracts and see, are there any rules that I've set in my network which are causing the packets to drop? Have I put in any filters saying that traffic coming in from this particular destination on port number X, Y, or Z, is it causing any drops or not? So if I look at this, I'm seeing that there are some hits for an implicit deny. So it means I've basically put in the wrong policy, which is causing the packets which are going from order to payment to get dropped. Yeah. Got it. So now you saw that from an application operations point of view, you can just go into the network view and give the right context to your network users. So you can have this live view, or you can say, I want to encapsulate this into a report and generate a report out of it and just pass it over to your network operator. So this is going to generate the report, and you can export it to your network operator after that.
That's correct. That means that way we can actually avoid the war room schedules as well before the war room schedules. We have all the information to share probably in email.
That's correct, Chandra.
So just to summarize, we started at the L7 layer on the application dashboard with the APM level metrics, and then we slowly started into the L4 layer view, and we actually again drilled down further into L2, L3 on.
So the workflow that you saw was from the point of view and application of an application operations persona. Now we are going to take a look at the demo and the workflow from an APIC or a network operator's persona. What we are going to do is jump into APIC, which is the controller for ACI. And what you're seeing on the screen here is basically the policies that you as a network operator set in order to have your endpoints which are connected by the ACI fabric and the ACI network talk to each other. So here I've created some groupings and set some policies between those groupings where my groupings include the order tier, the payment processing tier, the inventory tier, right? This is what you would see in ACI. Now, prior to this integration, the network operators did not have visibility into what are the endpoints that are connected, whether they're virtualized or not, and even they did not have visibility into the application workloads that are running on top of it. With this integration, we're changing it. And this is what this view looks like. So I'm going to walk you through this view. It might seem a bit dense at this point, but when we walk through it, it becomes much simpler. So what you see at the bottom is something that's completely new for the network operators. It's basically the information about the JVMs and the nodes that are running on top of endpoints that are connected to the networking fabric. So here I see order N1, which is a node. This order N1 is running on top of an endpoint named AppDynamics. Now let's go ahead and see the details about this, right? So I can go ahead and click this and see this particular node, AppDynamics, is part of the order processing tier. The health of this node is critical. It means that there is something going on this node which is not good for the application performance. Now this node is basically connected to this particular interface, so you get the information about the networking constructs that it is associated with. We also get the information about the services that this node or this endpoint provides. So if anything were to happen to this particular endpoint, from a networking point of view, these are the services for the application that would be affected, order rest. We're also bringing in the information about the health rule violations that are being seen by AppDynamics. So in this case, I'm seeing that there are 2 health rule violations that are happening, and I want to take a closer look at that. So I'll say I want to expand this, and I will go into health rule violations. So I can see the health rule violations that are happening and the history of it. What was the status of the health rule violation? So I see there are some average response times which are greater than what I expect it to be. So this is basically alluding or giving you more information about the event that's happening, and it's alluding to it being a networking issue. Another thing that you can get, at least from an endpoint perspective, is the operational information about it, which helps you troubleshoot or isolate the components that you need to look at. So this particular endpoint is having these operational parameters, right? The hosting server, the source where it is learned from, the NCAP VLAN over which the traffic is flowing through, right? So this helps you isolate the problem even further. Now, back to this view. We got the information about the endpoint. We got the information about the node. Let's move up in the tree and see where this endpoint is. So this endpoint is part of a grouping that we've created on ACI, which is AppDynamics, and this corresponds to the order processing tier that we have on the application. And you see that between these groups, we have some contracts or basically policies set which allow the communication between different endpoint services or endpoint group services. So I want to take a closer look at this because this will help me identify what exactly the issue is or give me more relevant context. So I'll say, go ahead and expand this. And this will tell me all the client endpoints that are there in this particular grouping for ACI and which of them are part of this application and which of them are not. So I have some operational information about client endpoints. I can also go ahead and take a look at the event analytics that's there related to this particular endpoint group. So I can say, what are the audit logs? What are the faults? What are the events that have happened, right? So I can trace back saying that I see my order processing tiers held as critical. Let me go ahead and debug this, and this gives you a very contextual view only related to that particular set of ACI network constructs. So you can troubleshoot the networking issue faster. Now, going back to this view again, a lot of times what happens is the network operators don't even know if all the endpoints within their defined construct, which is the endpoint group or grouping, are part of this application or not. The reason why knowing about this is important is you can set security group rules and have a more secure application. Think about a scenario where I just say I have 100 endpoints. Out of that, I'm allowing all 100 endpoints to talk to each other. Out of those 100 endpoints, 50 are part of an application, 50 are not. Do you think that application is secure? Probably not. Right? So you want to create groupings based off on what exactly the application looks like, and even drill down further into it and basically create groupings based on application services that are enabled, right? So in this case, the network operator has configured this particular AppDynamics grouping to have two endpoints, AppDynamics1 and some other set of endpoints. And out of that, only one is a part of this application. So ideally, you'd want to move these set of endpoints out of this grouping or the policy construct that you've created. So this app also tells you, hey, out of this grouping, only one or these are the relevant endpoints for the application. These are not. So you can create more secure policies around this application. So this is giving you the visibility into the application workloads. Think about a scenario where you want to change some configuration on a networking element. You want to know if any changes that I make, is it affecting the application in a positive way or a negative way. This integration can provide you with that. So if you want to change some configuration on AppDynamics endpoint group or any policy related to it, you can go ahead and change it and see within this tool itself, after a certain time, is it negatively affecting the performance of the application? If it is, what are the violations that are happening? And you can go back to the audit log and check if this was the audit or the change that I made which was causing the application performance issue. So you as a network operator are becoming more proactive. You have better visibility into your application workloads. So what you saw was the demo of integration between AppDynamics and ACI. But how is this integration possible? This integration is possible because we are exchanging data, exchanging APIs between AppDynamics controller and APIC, which is the controller for ACI. A lot of you would have questions about, hey, what sort of visibility do I give my application teams into my networking environment? What sort of visibility I give my networking teams into my application environment? So when we began this project, our objective was you get to learn or have the smarts of the other tool without actually leaving the UI, without actually leaving the comfort of the tool that you're used to. And these credentials or the way we exchange the data is read-only. So you as a network admin will not be able to write anything into AppD, or the application teams using AppD will not be able to change any configuration on your API. We also want to share some details about what our customers think about this integration. We have a quote from Director of Network Operations at a major U.S. insurance company where they had to have 130 people in a 6-hour war room. Think about the amount of resources you're spending for those 6 hours and the cost to your business. And this is what they said. They said AppDynamics and ACI integration is a killer feature. Wish they had this when they had 130 people in a war room for 6 hours. So you can see a lot of big enterprises, a lot of major enterprises are looking at this integration, and it is helping them solve a real-world problem. And this is not it, folks. So we have plans, big plans for AppDynamics working together with Cisco, and we have this vision that we outlined called as a central nervous system vision, where Cisco and other tools are bringing in visibility from the infrastructure, from the network, from security point of view, and we are bringing that into AppDynamics. Using Perspica acquisition that we had, we are building correlation engines. We're creating alerts. We're using artificial intelligence and machine learning to basically give you a faster root cause analysis so that you have faster incident response. You have resource scaling that works according to your environment. And network provision becomes faster, and the security of your entire application is taken into consideration as well. And all of this is being fed back into the visibility that we have through the other tools that we're bringing in. So again, just to recap, what you saw was 2 workflows and 2 use cases. The first workflow and the use case was from an application operations team point of view, where you have information or you're able to quickly identify the network root cause and go into the networking tool, which is ACI, with the right set of context and the right set of reports for your networking teams to debug. And the second use case in the workflow that you saw was from the point of view of the network or the ACI team, where they are able to get better visibility into the application workloads that are running behind the ACI-enabled networks. The real-time correlation of the application performance as to how it relates to the networking constructs. So this enables them to make changes in the network configuration and proactively troubleshoot issues if they happen. So if you want to learn more about this integration, enable this integration in your environment, we'd be very glad to reach out, work with you, and even schedule a demo with either one of us or the wider team as well. Chandra and I can get on a call and work with you on that. And we also have information about this integration in our product documentation, which will be shared with you. So that's it from
Awesome. Thank you, Devarshi and Chandra, for that great presentation. So as you mentioned, this does take us to the Q&A portion of the event. I want to thank the audience. There's a lot of questions that have already come through, and we will try to get through as many as we can in the next 15 minutes. But just understand that we may not get to all the questions live, and we will answer as many as we can and answer offline for any that we don't get here at this point. So no matter what, you'll definitely get your questions answered. So I also just want to remind you that we also have Prakash on the line. He didn't speak during the presentation, but he is here to also answer questions that come through. And so with that, let's just get started. The first question I have here, and we'll give this to Prakash, is this integration supported both for on-prem and SaaS deployments of AppDynamics?
Thanks, Elisa. Yes, this integration is supported for both the on-prem and SaaS deployments. Since the integration is between the controllers, where the AppD controller is communicating with the ACI controller and vice versa, as long as there is a network connectivity from the AppD controller on the SaaS to the ACI controller, which is on-prem, this integration would work. So which means that you might have to open up the firewall ports, but as long as you do that, it'll work.
Okay. And then just kind of like following up on that, is there any special configurations that is required to support SaaS?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the customer needs to open up the firewall port. Usually, the ACI is behind the firewall, which is inside the data center. So you need to open up the firewall ports for the AppD controller, which is running in the SaaS, to have a HTTP connectivity to the ACI controller within the data center.
Great. Okay. The next question is, so since this integration is cross-domain, giving access to tools that span across AppOps and NetOps, is there any control in place to prevent accidental changes by one another? Prakash, do you want to take that one too?
Sure, yeah. Yes, you're right on that. We are giving cross-domain visibility and access to the tools across the domain-specific owners. So we do have, the RBAC built in. So any credentials which you're providing to the AppD tool or to the ACI tool, that user can be restricted to view-only privilege using the standard RBAC mechanisms both on the AppD side as well as on the ACI side, so that you can only do basically read-only integration between both the tools.
Got it. Great. Thank you. And then the next question we actually got multiple times from multiple people and multiple variations, so I'm just going to kind of summarize as best as I can. So is this integration supported for both network-centric and app-centric modes of ACI?
So Alyssa, I'll take that question. So this integration is supported for both the modes. So the way this integration works on APIC is we do not care about whether you're running in network-centric or application-centric. We look at the endpoints that are there on APIC. So if you're running in app-centric or network-centric, it still works the same way.
Great. Thanks, Devarshi. Okay. The next question, or it was more of a comment, but I think we'll phrase it as a question for Prakash. So this person was had missed where the click is to get from AppDynamics to APIC. So Prakash, can you explain how that works?
Yeah, sure. So once you log into AppD, we do have something called a network dashboard, which actually displays the network connectivity between the application tiers. And once you go into the network dashboard, you select the network link which has an issue, and you click on that network link, which shows all the connections happening between the endpoints of that particular service. And you right-click on that network connection between the endpoints which you're interested in, and this shortcut will be available, or this menu will be available to launch into the Epic for troubleshooting the issues between those two endpoints.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next question is, sorry, 1 second. Let's see, sorry, there's a lot of questions here, so. Okay.
Network app-centric.
Okay.
I believe there was a question from a gentleman at Cargo.
Oh, this one. Okay, yes, thanks. Okay, thank you. So, this one is, will this AppDynamics integration help in a scenario where ACI is deployed as network-centric fabric?
Yes, this integration will help. When you look at the view on APIC, we tell you that the endpoints which are within this application profile, are they a part of this application or not? And if it is not a part of this application, we also give you a pointer saying that these endpoints are not a part of this application. You can go ahead and move them into other EPGs. So this, in a sense, helps you get from the network-centric mode to a more application-centric mode where the policy is driven by AppDynamics and the tiering that it has to offer.
Great, thank you. And so another question for you, Devarshi, this was asked during your demo specifically. So how many network devices and endpoint servers are you showing? How does the interface scale to 1,000 network devices and thousands of servers?
So in this particular demo, we covered about 12 endpoints, but if you look at live scenarios, like live deployments, right, the scale at which the applications are deployed, especially deployed and monitored in AppD, it's in the range of hundreds. We do scale to that level, and the way we show it in the UI is pretty comprehensive as well, where you can drill down into that tree view, and it's expandable and collapsible. So it gives a very seamless user experience to the users of this integration.
Great, thank you. So another question that we've got various forms of, and so I'll just summarize it in one easy question, is what is the best way to get started? So Prakash, maybe you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. I think the best way to get started is to reach out to one of us because this requires ACI fabric, this requires an AP controller, this requires basically network visibility to be set up on the AppD. We can help out get started with the installation requirements as well. So best way to is basically reach out. We can publish the email alias to which to reach out for help, and we can get started from there.
And Prakash, just to add to this point, if you already have AppD set up with the network visibility agent and ACI fabric or AP controller on version 3.2 and above, you can install this integration, at least on the APIC side, as an app that's available through ACI App Center and get started on that part.
Great, thank you. So for the audience, just to let you know, we probably only have time for maybe 2 to 3 more questions. And so I'm going to give the speakers some time to just kind of review the questions that are on, and then they can let me know which ones they want to answer. But I do have like logistical questions that I can answer. So there was a few questions that came up about whether the presentation will be available afterwards, and the answer is yes. You will receive an email within the next few hours, and it'll give you a copy of the recording. So, and that's something that you could definitely share with your colleagues. You could share, and you can listen to later as you see fit. Okay.
So one of the questions I think is important to answer is, does this ACI integration require Dynamics network agent to be installed? Prakash, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So there are 2 use cases for this integration. One is, the enhanced visibility for the network operator, and the other one is the troubleshooting use case for the application operator, right? So for the application operator, in order to drill down from the application view to the networking view, which is at the layer 4, and then further drill down into the layer 2, layer 3 view, we require the network agents to be installed. But for the enhanced visibility view for the network operator, that doesn't require network agents to be installed. This is more like the view you get inside ACI, inside the Epic, where you're overlaying the business information or the application information on top of the ACI constructs. That doesn't require the network agents to be installed. So for one use case, yes, you need network agents, but for the other use case, it is open for any applications written in any language.
And I think, do we have time for one last question?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, all this app info on ACI, does it need to be done manually, or is it done in an automated fashion through API push? I'll take that question. So the app itself takes care of making the API calls, correlating all that information. So you as a user don't have to worry about any manual steps involving correlating what's going on in AppD to what's going on in ACI. So it's completely automated.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to the audience as well for all of your questions. And so this does conclude our Q&A portion of the event. I know, again, that there are a few other questions here that we did not get to answer live, and we'll definitely reach out offline. I think before we close, there's just a few other things. One is, to the audience, you should see that there is a Resource Center widget that's on the left side of your screen if you haven't moved things around. And just note that if you wanted to see more, a more personalized demo, maybe you have more questions that you don't really want to ask in this more larger, broad setting, definitely fill out that form, or you can also reach out to us through the Q&A widget to let us know that you want a more personalized demo, and we'll get that scheduled for you. There is also some documentation on the AppDynamics for Cisco ACI integration, and so feel free to click through on that and share with your colleagues.
just wanted to point that out because once we close the webinar, your screen will change. You won't be able to go back to that resource center list because it'll then go to the survey. Okay, and so any other closing thoughts from Devarshi or Prakash before we close?
I think we covered multiple use cases, and the questions that have come up are really interesting, and I see the audience willing to try this out because these are completely different teams, right? So feel free to reach out to